This 9-0 Supreme Court ruling just shattered everything anti-gun states have built, while the mainstream media was busy with celebrity gossip and political drama. The highest court in America just dropped a legal bombshell. In a case that wasn't even about gun control, the Supreme Court unanimously declared something that now threatens every assault weapon ban in the country. They didn't use headlines, they didn't shout it, but buried in one sentence, one quiet, undeniable truth was a constitutional time bomb. And if you own an AR-15 or care about your rights, what comes next will affect you directly. Because California, New York, Illinois, and beyond, they're now standing on legal quicksand, where we break down the truth the media won't touch, and your constitutional rights come first. If you believe in freedom, hit that subscribe button now, because the fight is just beginning, and you need to be ready. Chapter 1. A pre-planned blitz on the Bill of Rights. This isn't ordinary legislation, it's premeditated constitutional sabotage. Governor Walz's October special session isn't designed to explore options. It's designed to pass predetermined gun control laws fast, with minimal public input and no meaningful debate. And with Minnesota lacking a state-level Second Amendment, the legal firewall is dangerously thin. Special session dates, October the 6th to 12th, 2025. The governor's emergency session allows no amendments unless all 4 caucus leaders agree. The entire agenda is restricted to gun reform and public safety. Bills have already been written and fast-tracked through committees. This isn't how democracy works. It's a deliberate circumvention of representative government, engineered to limit opposition and bulldoze dissent. And it sets a dangerous precedent for any state looking to silence gun owners by procedural force. Chapter 2. What's actually in the bill? Everything they could fit. This package doesn't nibble around the edges. It targets the core of American gun ownership. What you can own, how you can use it, and whether you can build it yourself. Supporters call it modern regulation. But the language reads like a legal declaration of war on your freedom. Full ban on AR-15 and similar semi-automatic rifles. Criminal penalties for possession of magazines with over 10 rounds. Total prohibition on binary triggers, bump stocks, and forced reset triggers. Ban on 80% lowers, kits, and all privately made firearms. Expansion of red flag laws and firearm restraining orders. Millions allocated for public education on enforcement. These aren't loopholes, they're closing. They're rights they're eliminating. This legislation turns millions of responsible gun owners into criminals, not for what they have done, but for what they own. Chapter 3. Why this entire process violates the Constitution. This package doesn't just attack the Second Amendment, it violates how laws are supposed to be made in a constitutional republic. There's no fair process, no meaningful public debate, and no acknowledgement of the Supreme Court's rulings in Heller, McDonald, or Bruen. That's not just bad governance, it's legally indefensible. Violates the Second Amendment by banning arms in common use. Red flag law expansions undermine the 14th Amendment's due process clause. Bans on kits and parts ignore Bruen's historical tradition test. The rushed session violates legislative norms and democratic transparency. The absence of a state-level RKBA clause leaves no in-state recourse. If passed, this legislation will be challenged in court, but that may take months or years. In the meantime, gun owners face criminal exposure and legal uncertainty. And make no mistake, the authors of this bill know exactly what they're doing. Chapter 4. Red flag expansion, weaponizing speculation. Red flag laws are already controversial, but this bill turns them into a weapon against the presumption of innocence. It's no longer about preventing clear threats, it's about allowing distant acquaintances, even total strangers, to initiate gun confiscation proceedings based on subjective concern. It expands eligibility for those who can request red flag orders, allows non-family members to file petitions without direct evidence, no criminal conviction or charge required, authorizes seizure of firearms before any hearing is held. State funding is directed toward media campaigns to promote usage. This isn't about public safety. It's about normalizing the idea that the government can take your rights based on feelings, not facts. And once that door is open, it never swings shut again. Chapter 5. The assault weapons lie, legally destroyed by facts. Assault weapon is a made-up term, and courts are finally calling it out. Under Heller, McDonald, and Bruen, the Second Amendment protects firearms in common use. And nothing is more common than the AR-15, with over 24 million in civilian hands. yet this bill would criminalize them overnight, targets semi-automatic rifles based on cosmetic features, bans any rifle with pistol grips, telescoping stocks, or flash suppressors. Outlaws standard capacity magazines are 15 to 30 rounds, no grandfather clause for the current owner's possession that becomes illegal. Violates the Supreme Court's common use doctrine established in Heller 2008 and reaffirmed in Bruen 2022. This is the same legal strategy being struck down in California, Illinois, and elsewhere. Yet Minnesota is pressing forward, ignoring precedent, evidence, and constitutional rights. And it's happening right now. Chapter 6. Turning gun owners into felons overnight. This bill doesn't just regulate future purchases. It makes criminals out of law-abiding citizens who already own now prohibited items. There's no real grandfather clause, no compensation, and no easy legal workaround. It's confiscation by criminalization. Existing AR-15s and similar rifles must be surrendered, disabled, or stored out of state. Possession of large capacity magazines becomes a felony. Privately made firearms or 80% lowers are banned with no registry path. No provision for compensation, buyback, or due process hearing. Enforcement begins immediately upon passage. This isn't how responsible legislation works. The bill treats peaceful, law-abiding citizens like enemies of the state, and it sets a legal time bomb for anyone who doesn't check the news daily. Chapter 7. The data they don't want you to see. When politicians push extreme gun control, they often claim it's backed by data, but the reality behind these claims tells a very different story. In every state where similar bans have passed, the statistics reveal mass non-compliance, negligible public safety benefits, and widespread confusion among law-abiding gun owners, and Minnesota lawmakers are pretending it doesn't exist. In Connecticut, after its 2013 assault weapons registration law passed, less than 15% of gun owners complied. The rest refused peacefully. New York's SAFE Act saw similar results. Studies showed 85 to 90% of affected firearms were never registered, and not a single mass shooting was prevented. California's magazine ban, struck down and reinstated repeatedly, failed to show measurable reductions in crime. The DOJ and ATF have repeatedly noted that the majority of guns used in violent crime are illegally obtained, often stolen, not legally owned rifles. FBI statistics show that rifles of all kinds, AR-15S included, account for fewer homicides annually than knives, fists, or blunt objects. If the evidence doesn't support the policy, why push it? Because the political optics are more important than the real impact. The governor and lawmakers aren't citing studies, they're citing fear. But fear-based policymaking is how rights get erased. Chapter 8. Why this isn't just about Minnesota. You might think this is just a local issue of one state's bad bill, but that's not how gun control works anymore. What happens in Minnesota is being watched, funded, and coordinated by national organizations aiming to export the model to other states. Everytown for Gun Safety and Giffords have already issued statements supporting Walz's plan, and both have political arms operating nationwide. States like New Jersey, Oregon, and Maryland have similar bills waiting in the wings. In Washington, a new proposal expands assault weapon definitions based on Minnesota's draft language. Legislators in Illinois have hinted at using Minnesota's fast-track strategy to sidestep public hearings in their own 2026 session. The Biden administration's ATF leadership has quietly praised the effort in closed briefings. This is a national domino effect waiting to happen. If Governor Walz passes this bill under the much of the radar, expect a wave of copycat legislation in 2026. And unless gun owners everywhere take notice, what starts in Minnesota won't stay there. It'll become the new anti-gun roadmap. Chapter 9. Legal challenges are already being prepared. Governor Walz's team might think this is a slam dunk, but constitutional law isn't on their side, and gun rights attorneys across the country are already preparing for battle. They're not waiting to lose in court. They're preparing to strike back the moment the bill is signed. The Firearms Policy Coalition is monitoring the bill's text for potential Second Amendment violations under Bruen. Gun Owners of America is coordinating with Minnesota Gun Rights to file a federal challenge within 24 to 48 hours of passage. Legal teams will likely cite violations of the Due Process Clause, Equal Protection Clause, and Takings Clause for criminalizing property without compensation. The ban on ghost guns and 3 deprinted receivers may trigger First Amendment challenges based on code sharing and digital rights. Several federal judges in the Eighth Circuit have recently ruled in favor of gun owners in similar cases, including suppressor bans and permit denials. What does this mean? It means the courts are likely to get involved and fast. But while lawsuits are pending, enforcement could still move forward, and that's what makes this dangerous. Even unconstitutional laws cause damage before they're overturned. Chapter 10. The fight begins. Before the first vote, Governor Walz has set the stage. The special session is short, the rules are stacked, and public input is being minimized. But that doesn't mean this battle is lost. In fact, this is exactly when it begins. The special session starts on October 6th and could last as few as 4 days. Only limited public testimony is allowed, and committee meetings are being scheduled with less than 24 hours notice. Gun rights groups in Minnesota are urging every gun owner to show up in person, call their legislators, and flood inboxes with opposition. Pro-gun legislators have warned that amendments may be blocked, and floor debate may be limited by procedural rules. Meanwhile, anti-gun media outlets are trying to paint the opposition as extremist, hoping to silence valid constitutional concerns. This isn't about one bill, it's about setting a precedent. If the state can ram through sweeping gun bans in a compressed timeline with no accountability, they'll do it again, and so will other governors. That's why now is the moment to act, because after the vote, it might be too late. The Second Amendment doesn't bend to politics, and now, with this 9-0 ruling, the Supreme Court has made it clear. AR-15s are lawful, they're common, and they are protected. This wasn't just a win in court. This was a massive victory for every responsible gun owner who's tired of being blamed, punished, or ignored. But this fight isn't over. The legal dominoes are just starting to fall, and the opposition is already planning its next move. To keep you informed, prepared, and one step ahead. So don't just watch from the sidelines. Share this video with every American who owns a rifle, and drop a comment below. Is this the end of the assault weapon ban era, or just the beginning of something bigger? Whatever happens next, we'll be right here, breaking it down, because your rights aren't negotiable.